Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the content patch for the 6th of Feb 2013. My name is TotalBiscuit with today's gaming news and comment coming up in the show. The OUYA Android console scheduled for release in June. Sony cuts ties with PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale developer SuperBot. The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt has been officially announced. Tera Online gets free-to-play relaunch and adds new content. And Paradox claiming to be tightening up standards after the Gettysburg Armored Warfare release. The Android console OUYA, that received the most funding in history for a video game project on Kickstarter, has been announced for a June release date. They have also claimed that the console will be available via major retail partners such as Amazon and Best Buy, and you will be able to pre-order the console via those retailers. The CEO of the company, Julie Ehrman, spoke to the Wall Street Journal and said that the backers of the Kickstarter will be receiving their consoles in March, so that is, of course, 3 months earlier, and pre-orders will go out in April. She also claimed that we don't need to beat Xbox or Sony or any console that enters the marketplace, we need to carve out our own niche. She also addressed the rumors that Apple was intending to release a controller for its Apple TV and said that we're okay with that, and one of the premises of being open is that you can use what we build for other things, but you can create accessories and peripherals for our device as well, and at the end of the day it makes our ecosystem richer. That's probably the most interesting point that I've heard from these guys for a while, the whole notion of enriching the ecosystem. It sounds like a very pretentious and poncy thing to say, but it kind of lines up to my opinion on all of these forthcoming Android devices, as well as notions of playing PC games in your living room or via a mobile device. And the idea is that there is not one solution. You can't just have one console that comes along and says, yeah, this is what you use to play Android on TV, and then that becomes the monopoly. What you need is a situation where there are multiple devices available that are capable of different things, and then you can make a choice as to which device you want suited to your needs, assuming that you even want one at all. It's the same thing with the PC argument. There is no one-trick solution to getting PCs to a higher popularity level when it comes to gaming or getting them into the living room. That's the kind of thing that the Steambox attempts to actually do, but the Steambox in itself is not a single piece of hardware. It is a concept. It is a set of standards. It's not a box, literally speaking. The fact that the OUYA is coming out and bringing Android gaming to the television with a physical controller, and the fact that there's also the Game Stick doing just that, and that we're seeing the same kind of thing from Project Shield, this is something that gives me a lot of hope for the potential for good development on the Android platform. I don't see the fact that the Android system is less powerful as being too much of a big deal if interesting and creative games can be put on it. The awkward thing about the current generation consoles is that they're just powerful enough, but the problem with them being just powerful enough is that they drag the PC back in terms of a lot of releases and technology that's used because the consoles themselves can't keep up with it. Android is so much further back than that I feel that the games that come out for that system aren't really a threat to PC or next-gen consoles, and in fact the limited technology forces innovation. You can't make an amazingly graphically impressive game on an Android system in the same way that you can on a PC or a next-generation console, so you think, well, what can I do that makes this game intriguing? What kind of cool mechanics can I integrate, and what kind of interesting ideas come out? I mean, it's obvious from looking at some of the great indie successes that all of this stuff does well, not because it's graphically incredible, but because it's actually very interesting and innovative, and more often than not, they're working within limited confines. The system will be made available for $99, and extra controllers will cost $50, which is quite a high amount, I've got to say. I mean, this thing better sing, dance, and make tea for me, as far as I'm concerned, if that's going to be the cost of it, but one way or the other, it will be available in June, and so much for vaporware, eh? Considering the amount of accusations surrounding this device, it will be interesting to see whether or not it's actually worth your while. It's been a bad couple of weeks for SuperBot, the developer of PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale. Just a week or so after the developer suffered layoffs, Sony has officially announced that it's ended its agreement with SuperBot Entertainment, which to many people means that the future of the game as well as the actual studio is very much in doubt. Speaking to Kotaku, a Sony spokesman said that Sony Computer Entertainment has confirmed that the working agreement with developer SuperBot Entertainment has amicably ended. We had a positive working relationship with a talented studio, and we wish them the best of success in their endeavor. PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale and the title's forthcoming DLC releases will continue to be fully supported by Santa Monica Studio. Well, that was quick. It's not necessarily unusual for Sony to cut off relations with one of their sort of premium developers, as it were. I mean, these guys were brought on board to do PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale, and now that is done, so they don't really need to be involved anymore, right? Well, it's unfortunate because it seems to indicate to me that it's fairly unlikely that we're going to be seeing an awful lot of extra content for this, and more to the point, we're probably not going to be seeing PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale 2. Now, this is unfortunate because I feel that this concept had a reasonable amount of longevity to it, and when it comes to developing a brand new fighting engine, even if it's very obviously based on work from Super Smash Bros., then you need to develop that. You need to make it better over several iterations. There's a reason why people love Melee over, say, the original Smash Brothers, right? Because Melee is just better. Now, I'm not really going to make any arguments in terms of Brawl because a lot of people thought the changes there weren't so good, but the fact is that when you make something like this, you iterate it and you just make it better over time. And I think there were a lot of interesting things when it came down to PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale. I liked the mashup between the two different game franchises where the level would dynamically change as you went through there. I liked the little bit of Power Stone vibe that was going on. And I like the fact that I could essentially play a Smash Brothers game without playing a Smash Brothers game. A lot of the characters that I'm seeing in PlayStation All-Stars are ones that I'm a little bit more familiar with or more interested in than the guys from the Super Smash Brothers series, because, hey, I was never a Nintendo kid, but it was a decent game. It was pretty solid. A lot of people really hated the way that the Super System worked, but I thought it was okay. I didn't really have a problem with it, but then again, I don't have much of a frame of reference. It was a fairly enjoyable game, and it seems like we're probably not going to see a second one. It would have been nicer to see a better lineup. I mean, there's some really weird stuff in there. As much as I kind of like seeing the Big Daddy from BioShock, that has absolutely nothing to do with PlayStation whatsoever. And for God's sake, where the hell was Crash Bandicoot? Talk about iconic. You could also talk about Cloud from Final Fantasy and things like that. Or the older, not the newer Dante, for God's sake. But it seems like the franchise would have had the opportunity to hopefully build a much better roster and collaborate with different companies over the course of a couple more games, and you'd actually get those Square characters. You'd actually get the Crash Bandicoots and all sorts of things like that in there, and that would have been pretty fun. But as it stands, chances are, by the looks of it, we're not going to get another one, and there is free DLC coming in the form of 2 more characters. I know that for a fact. But aside from that, the game probably doesn't have much of a future, and that is a shame. After a lot of rumors and the pseudo-confirmation as part of the Cyberpunk 2077 trailer, The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt has been officially announced on a cover story for Game Informer magazine. It will, needless to say, be using the new Red Engine 3 technology, which also confirms that the shot we saw from the Red Engine 3 is most likely from the Witcher 3 game that's currently in development. It will be available on PC in 2014 and also, quote, all high-end platforms available, which is a very interesting remark to make, and of course indicates that they are shooting to try and get this onto next-generation consoles. There's a metric ton of information and footage as part of the actual article itself. Needless to say, I'm not going to give you all of that information. You should probably just go and read it. But there are a few features that I would like to highlight, including the fact that they are shooting for a more open-world feel. They felt that The Witcher 2 should have been more like Skyrim in that way. There is apparently supposed to be proper mounted combat, although they are not entirely sure that it will actually make it into the game because they don't really know what's going on with it and whether or not it will actually work out well. They have doubled the size of their development team, which is very nice indeed, and the game will allow you to completely abandon the storyline, although if you do so, it will have repercussions later on, which is something I have always liked. I've liked the ability to go off the beaten track and just abandon everything, but I never liked the idea that everything would just wait for you to get back. That's just, quite frankly, ridiculous. So this has always been a game about consequences and choices, even if those choices were not so much grey, as in there is no good choice, but regardless, it looks like something that's going to be very interesting indeed. There's also a claim that the game is going to be 40 times larger than the last one. Good lord. And the very notion that you could have a Skyrim-like game that also had the really good storytelling, nice choices and decision-making and morality of the Witcher series, along with the Witcher's combat, which is miles better than anything Elder Scrolls has ever had, that kind of scares the hell out of me, because this seems like the game that I could sink a huge amount of time into. And it seems like the game that RPG fans have been craving for decades now, and perhaps only now it's actually possible to pull that off. Skyrim had a lot of problems, Witcher 2 less so, but it was of course a more limited game. I don't necessarily know if I really want it to be completely open world. I like the structure of Witcher 2. It gave a lot of momentum, a lot of pace, and of course a lot of gravitas to the way that the game worked. Not only in terms of its story, but of course in terms of its progression and mechanics, rather than simply wandering off into the world to grind stuff and all that kind of nonsense. So we'll see how it turns out. I mean, it's not like these guys make bad games, so I think that we have a nice basis for comparison with their previous work, and I can safely say I'm super excited to once again see a big AAA title focused on the PC as the primary development platform, and who knows, maybe before 2014 I'll actually get to play The Witcher 2 for more than a couple of hours. That would be great. For more information, of course, pick up this month's copy of Game Informer in the US. If you don't have access to that, well, I guess you'll have to figure out a different way of getting the information. After the previous announcement that Tera Online would be going free-to-play, it has indeed done so in the form of Tera Rising, which is currently available right now. The formerly subscription-based MMO that was originally a Korean game and translated and changed in some aspects for the EU and US market has received a large content update called 2.0, which features a new dungeon called the Crucible of Flame, as well as a level 60 3v3 PvP arena. If you already have a subscription to the game, your sub will be converted to the so-called Tera Club membership, which contains a rather large selection of benefits. So let's take a look at the difference. They're going down the three-tiered route, which is something that we've seen in a number of games. It, in fact, I think was pioneered by Dungeons & Dragons Online Eberron Unlimited. The free user, the veteran user, and Tera Club. Veteran users include those that bought the game in the first place and had subscribed at some point. And the free user, of course, is new to the game. So we've got different character slots. Veterans get 8 character slots, which is pretty damn generous, I feel. Free users get 2. Dungeon refresh for both players, if you don't pay for the game, is a normal cooldown timer, which is quite nice. So it looks like that hasn't been changed at all based on the previous version of the game, but if you're in the Tera Club, you can enter dungeons twice as much and wait half as long. That's pretty good. Once again, the dungeon bonus reward is also at 100%, so you get a Valkyon's Response, which is a so-called package of consumables. You get double that if you're in the Tera Club. Daily quests, you can do 10 if you happen to be playing for free, 20 if you're in the Tera Club. And then there's a bunch of stuff that you get as part of the Tera Club. You essentially get a bunch of special consumables, lucky keys to open in-game boxes, so they're doing that whole thing. Like, oh, here's a chest that you can't open unless you pay for. Teleport items, as well as scrolls to summon merchants, trade brokers, bank access, daily boost items, and a special mount as well. None of those are available unless you pay. Bank tabs, it's currently 1 bank tab with 72 slots for free users. You can purchase more. 4 for veterans, that's 288. And then you get the same amount at Tera Club. There's also a gold cap in the mail. This is designed, of course, to prevent gold farming. It's unlimited for anyone that's bought the game previously. There's a limit on the amount of trade broker transactions you can do at any given time, so that's the auction house. 30 for veterans, 10 for free-to-play guys, and then 50 if you happen to be part of the Tera Club. You get a discount as well on sales tax if you're from the Tera Club with the auction house, and a sales discount too. And you actually even get a special in-game title if you happen to be a veteran user. That's surprisingly fair. I mean, that's actually seriously fair. So what they've essentially done here is they've made the normal level of play the veteran user, yeah? So if you happen to pay before, you don't have to pay anymore, and you still pretty much get the same thing, from what I can tell, based on this comparison here. But if you pay for a subscription, you now get a bunch of different benefits that you wouldn't have gotten previously. Wow, that's actually really good. Surprisingly good. I might be tempted to go back in again, certainly, but one way or the other, it seems like this would be worthy of another shot. As regards to the game itself, it's pretty fun. The problem it's got is the questing is just WoW style and can be incredibly tedious and laborious. So you've really got to get by on the strength of how good the world looks and how good the combat is. They've also got those creepy Ellen characters, which I really don't like, plus the very much Korean style of hyper-stylized uber-sexualization on female characters like the female Castellan as well as the Ellen, which is extremely disturbing because they actually look like children. You know, if you can get past that stuff, it's actually a pretty good game, all things considered. So now that it's free, you might want to go and try it out. You can do that on the website. And finally, the CEO of Paradox Interactive, the PC publisher, has spoken at length to GameSpy on the subject of 2012 releases and a bunch of problems that Paradox releases have had. So apparently this all started after the launch of Gettysburg Armored Warfare. This is a game that I absolutely slammed. It was one of the worst games of last year simply because it didn't work, and when it did, it wasn't very good anyway. It was a complete disaster, and it should have never been launched at that time. Now, speaking to GameSpy, he said that after this, we also closed 4 game projects. He says, we looked at those games and said, well, these games are not up to the standards that we're looking for at Paradox, so we're going to close them. We're not going to have any more games that are unplayable at release. The article also reveals that Paradox has a dedicated internal QA team now and has also been working more closely with third-party testing companies to try and avoid buggy or otherwise unplayable launches, although the CEO admits, of course, that this will not happen overnight and that you can't entirely rule out a buggy launch. Unfortunately, it would appear that its first release of 2013, that of course being Dungeon Land, has suffered a few problems for some people, including some performance issues as well as connectivity problems. So it would not appear that this has really had that much of an impact as of yet. And Paradox perhaps remains in this situation of being probably the most interesting publisher in the PC space right now, but not quite capable of properly QAing and putting in appropriate quality control measures to ensure that the games that actually come out under its banner are 100% functional on launch. Alongside Gettysburg, of course, there was the Sword of the Stars 2 incident, which was an absolute disaster. Apparently that is now more playable than it was, but I'm still terrified to go anywhere near it. We'll see, but it breaks my heart every time I see this, because I actually really like the Paradox guys. I've hung out with them at events, of course I have, because they do events. We come when we play their games and we critique them and things like that. And they're really great guys. They have a great outlook, and of course the amount of games that they bring out on PC are really quite fantastic, and a lot of them are really, really good. At least they have really good concepts. Unfortunately, they more often than not fall into this trap of being released too early and not being properly bug tested and QA'd. Game of Dwarves is one example of that. Gettysburg, of course, is another. Crusader Kings didn't really seem to have that many problems, and neither did Naval War Arctic Circle, which is always good to see. It's great that those things actually worked out well, but you can't keep releasing games with those kind of problems and expect them to keep being bought. I mean, there's also games like Starvoid that came out that I think literally nobody bought that. I actually tried to get a game to actually check this out, but I couldn't. I just couldn't do it because there was no one playing the thing. So it's really unfortunate to see that. Obviously, they're looking for like the next Magicka-like hit, and Dungeon Land could very well be that, especially if it has strong DLC offerings and all of the bugs actually get ironed out and fixed in relatively short order. But yeah, I hope that they really do follow through with this commitment to quality, because that's the real thing that's holding them back right now. We need more quality control on Paradox titles. Okay, folks, that's me done for the day. Thank you very much for watching the Content Patch, and I will see you next time.